Hi, this is David Halen, and you are listening to my short story entitled Humanity. I hope you enjoy. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let us make man in our own image." But one of the archangels intervened, saying, "God, I don't think that's a good idea right now." God looked at the angel. "What do you mean?" "The world you have created, it is formless and void. Tohu wabohu. There's nothing for man on earth presently." The angel answered, "In addition to that, it's dark, and they wouldn't be able to see anyways." God thought about this for a moment. He nods. "What is your name?" "Michael." God nods. "Okay, Michael." God looked out at the formless earth and spoke, "Let there be light." And there was light. And when God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let us create man in our own image." Michael spoke up. God?" God looked over at the angel. "Is there a problem, Michael?" "It's good that you want to create man in our own image," Michael answered. "But man are not deities. They don't have the longevity and energy to swim all the time. And what are they going to eat? Each other?" God thought for a moment. "I would rather them not eat each other," God said. "You're right." God then looked out over the earth and said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide waters from the waters." "What?" Michael asked. "I'm making a dome over the earth to separate the waters above from the waters below," God answered. "Is it good?" The angel asked. "Yes, it is very good," God answered. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let us make man in our own image." God cleared his throat. "God?" God looked over at Michael. "Yes, Michael?" "My argument from yesterday still stands. I don't believe that man can swim everywhere," Michael explained. "What do you expect them to do?" God asked. "Walk on the water?" Michael looked at God with a look of confusion about himself. "Is that even possible, God?" God shrugged. "I would like to think that it is." Michael slowly nodded, but his nod turned into him shaking his head. "Maybe you can make them something better to walk on." God sighed. "Fine." Then God looked over the earth and said, "Let the waters under the firmament be gathered unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. "Let us call the dry land earth," God announced to his angels. Michael contorted his face in deep thought. God noticed. "What is it, Michael?" Michael nodded. "I guess that makes sense." And God called the waters together the seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our own image." Michael began to speak up. "God?" God wheeled towards Michael. "What is it, Michael?" Aren't you going to give man something to eat?" Michael asked. "Can't I give them food later?" Michael gestured to himself. "I would think it would be good for the food to already be ready for man before man is created." God nodded, then looked out over the earth. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. God saw the foliage growing from the earth, and he saw that it was good. And then the evening and the morning were the third day. Then God said, "Let us create man in our own image." Michael spoke up again. "God?" God stared down Michael. "Yes, Michael?" "It just occurred to me that we don't have time up here in heaven. Time is irrelevant." "I know," God said. "So why are we talking about this?" Because time exists on Earth, Michael answered, and man is going to need some way to tell the time. God sighed, then said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven, to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God made set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Michael cleared his throat. "Is that it?" God shot Michael a glare. "What more do you want?" "I mean," Michael said, "it would be good to be able to tell how much time passed, but right now the lights you made aren't moving." God looked over all of his angels and pointed at one of the archangels. "You, what is your name?" The angel had answered, "Uriel." God nodded. "Make sure the lights move, Uriel." "Okay, God." And Uriel went about his duty. And then God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Then God said, "Let us now make man in our own image." He then looked over at Michael. "Any objections, Michael?" "Yes." "What kind of objections could possibly be made?" God asked. "Man is going to be lonely without some kind of company down there," Michael said. "Can't I give man some friends later?" Michael shook his head. "Fine." God looked over the earth and said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." And God created great whales, every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. "That's it?" Michael interjected. "You wanted more?" God asked. "I mean, they're nice, but what if they die?" God looked over the living creatures and the fowl and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth." Michael then looked over the earth after God blessed the creatures. "Oh, I don't know what I was expecting, but certainly not that." And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. Then God said, "Let us now." He looked over at Michael, who didn't say a word. "Let us now make man in our own image." Michael shook his head. God walked up to Michael. "What do you suppose I create before I create man? Galaxies? Black holes? Planets? What is it, Michael?" Michael had a confused look on his face. "I don't think any of that will fit in the firmament, and Uriel already has his hands full," Michael said. "What I was going to say was that I don't think fish and birds are good enough company." "How, Michael? Some of the birds even talk to you," God declared. "Yeah, but only if you talk to them first, and it takes them a while to figure out how to talk to you," Michael told God. God said something under his breath. "What was that?" Michael asked God. "I said that one day a donkey might talk better than a bird." Michael is confused. "What's a donkey?" "One of the new creation for today," God said, "because somebody says that Earth isn't ready for man yet." Michael just stared at God with a blank expression on his face. God turned to the earth and spoke. "Let earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind." And it was so, and God saw that it was good. God then looked over at Michael. Michael was looking over all creation. Then he looked up at God and nods. God let out a sigh of relief. "Finally!" Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him. And God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And evening and morning were the sixth day. Michael approached God, but God said to the angel, "Not now, I wish to rest." Michael looked at God, resting with the earth at his footstool, and took in the scene. Then the angel walked away. "You may as well bless this day," Michael said as he walked out. God looked up at Michael as he was walking away. "I think I might." Then God got up and looked over his creation, and Michael came up next to him. "Man is wandering around the earth aimlessly," Michael told God. "Wandering? There are stars, sun and moon to guide him." Michael shook his head. "Not what I meant. I mean he needs a home." "But Earth is his home," God retorted. A smaller home within Earth," the angel said. God looked over the creation and sighed. "Fine." And God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed, and out of the ground made the Lord grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food, but the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God had the man dress the garden, and to keep it. And God commanded man, saying, "Of every tree in the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. For in the day that you eat its fruit, you shall surely die." The man looked at God wide-eyed at what he was commanded of, and said, "Already I make sure I'll never do that, because death sounds bad." Then God took a step back at all of his creation. And it didn't take Michael's intervening for God to determine that it was not good for man to be alone. Then God sent every beast of the field, every fowl of the air, and brought them unto the man, to see what he would call them. And whatsoever the man called every living creature, that was the name from then on. As man was naming the animals, God came by to see the man's progress. Sparrow, cardinal, titbird, boob chicken, breast wren. God interrupted man. "I would rather you not name the animals like that. Could you come up with something else for them?" Man then looked at another fowl and pointed at it, saying, "Cock." God sighed and let the man continue. God then went to speak with Michael, and Michael asked God, "Is man pleased with the company you have created him?" God looked at where man stood amongst the creatures that God had created, and God said, "It still seems that he is alone. The animals have partners to be fruitful with, but man doesn't." Michael had a confused expression on his face. Then God said to his angel, "No, that's not supposed to work like that." Michael had an idea. What if we make a special partner for man, one that's wholesome, caring, endearing, beautiful, and lovely, that is close enough to the likeness of man, but is female? God pondered this for a moment. That would cost about an arm and a leg for all of that. Michael looked discouraged. "What about a rib?" God paused. "Well, she will be beautiful." Michael nodded. "Maybe if you go down there afterwards and talk to them often, they will learn virtues from you." God nodded. "That's a good idea." God turned towards the earth and said, "I just wish Lucifer didn't rebel so he could sing man a lullaby." "Maybe Gabriel can tell the man a bedtime story?" Michael suggested. "I think I'll just put him into a deep sleep," God said. And God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh, and the rib, which God had taken from the man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And the man said, "This is now the flesh of my bones, and the flesh of my flesh. And she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. God then approached Michael. Satisfied? Michael nodded. Yeah. God smiled in agreement. Then Michael spoke up. It's missing adorable pink birds the size of whales. It is not, God quickly said. Michael looked over at God, who was still smiling, and sighed. Fine. Hi, this is David Halem, and you just finished listening to a short story entitled Humanity. I hope you enjoyed. See you next week.